Good evening, everyone. Can see people filtering in. We're so excited for tonight. My name is Jennifer Tafe. I am the director of the Museum of American Bird Art, or MABA. I'd like to thank you for joining us for tonight's lecture. Tonight is the second in our free fall online lecture series, The Art of Birds. And with this series, we hope to broaden ideas about birds and art and who tells these stories and how. After tonight, we have 4 more exciting lectures in the series this fall, each featuring an accomplished scholar, creator, or artist. And we hope that you'll join us for all of those by registering for free on our website at massaudubon.org/MABA, M-A-B-A. And for those of you who are somewhat new to our community, our museum's community, I encourage you to visit our website to learn more about all the exciting programs we offer and to learn more about the new museum building that we are planning in Concord, Massachusetts. I'd like to extend a special thanks to AJ, our IT manager, and our marketing staff for making this series happen. And finally, we really welcome and encourage your questions. So please enter those into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to those at the end of the lecture. So without further ado, it gives me great honor and pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker, artist Sam Zimmerman. Tonight, Sam will share his art inspired by various bird relatives of the Gichi Gami, or Lake Superior region. And his talk will include rich personal stories of his own experiences, which led to the inspiration for so many of his paintings. Sam's work explores his Ojibwe heritage, his experiences in nature upon his return to the Grand Portage Reservation, while preserving shared oral histories, sharing his experiences with our animal, bird, fish, and plant relatives, while incorporating the natural landscape of Lake Superior's North Shore. Sam focuses on continuing the Anishinaabe conservation, the tradition of storytelling, embedding the themes of environmental stewardship and conservation of the North Shore through his studio and public art commissions. The last 12 months or so have been a tremendously successful and productive time for Sam, and the ABA just put out a great piece. I encourage you to go online and read that about all of this amazing activity that Sam has been up to. He has completed a mind-blowing number of large-scale amazing projects, including creating permanent public artworks for Minnesota State Parks and Trails, an exhibition which just closed recently called Walking the Shores, which was the result of an artist residency with the Tetagooch State Park. He also just recently finished a large-scale mural in Grand Marais with a fellow Minnesota artist, Adam Swanson. He also published a book in May of this year, which is a family project called How the Birds Got Their Songs, which Sam illustrated, and which tells the story, his great-grandmother's story, and is written by his cousin, Travis Zimmerman. And Sam also told me just tonight that it won a prestigious Children's Book Award. So that's very exciting. He also has 2 more books underway, one a children's book about bison calf and one that is a bilingual art coffee table book that celebrates and seeks to preserve the Ojibwe language. And going back to the very start of the year, Sam was the cover artist, and this is how I was just totally blown away by Sam's art and was introduced to his work, was through his he was chosen as the cover artist for Birding Magazine's Bird of the Year. And his magnificent depiction of a common loon was featured on the cover of the January 2025 issue. He's also a really wonderful, nice guy, and we're super excited to have him with us. I could go on, but we should probably get started and let Sam share his art and his knowledge with us. So we are so excited to have him tonight. Please welcome artist Sam Zimmerman.
Right. Well, bonjour, Ojibwe for hello. Good evening. Miigwech, thank you, Jennifer, for that wonderful introduction. I'll introduce myself traditionally in our language. Sam Zimmerman Indigenous, Zhaawanoogiizhik Ojibwe Hmong, and Ojibwe and Dudum. And what I've shared with you is that my name is Sam Zimmerman. I've shared with you my Ojibwe name, and I've also shared with you that I'm a member of the Crane Clan, one of 7 clans of the Ojibwe people. You'll notice on my earrings, they are in fact Sandhill Craigs. They are beaded. And there's a theme that I will share as I share different images with you. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and get us started. So as Jennifer shared, please feel free to put questions in, and we will have time at the end to hopefully answer all the questions that are provided. So, one moment. All right. And so this evening's talk is going to be featuring our bird relatives of Gichi Gami, which is Lake Superior. I live in Duluth, Minnesota, which is on the southern tip of the North Shore of Lake Superior. And the birds relatives that are featured in tonight's discussion are those that I've experienced or either have experienced myself or have learned about in my time returning back home to Minnesota. And these species and these relatives are featured pretty heavily in my work. And so I'll begin by sharing with you the images and the paintings that we're going to look at, and I'm going to share this evening with all of you. It'll be 13 different works, each with a different lesson or a different experience or of importance, either to myself as an artist, to myself as an Ojibwe Indigenous artist, or a bird relative of greater importance to the Ojibwe people. They're not organized in any particular way, just thinking about the colors and thinking about just how we share tonight. So you'll see in the titles, you'll see words that do not look like English, and they are in fact not English. They're Ojibwe Moan, which is the language of the Ojibwe people. I use my art as a way to share language, to preserve language, and also to learn language. I'm by no means bilingual or completely fluent in the language. Very few of us are. And so I'm relearning a language that my grandfather spoke quite fluently. So with that being started, I'm going to take us into the very first painting. It was the very first painting that I did of any bird relative, my very first bird piece. And it's titled Miigwech Flight over Three Sisters Point. And if you can't tell, this is in fact a bald eagle. The Ojibwe word for bald eagle is Miigwech. Interesting enough, we refer to them in English as bald eagle. They're not bald. They're actually just white-headed. And so in this particular piece, Three Sisters Point is in fact a real location in Lake Superior. I was out hiking along the lake as winter was coming in. And if you don't know, Lake Superior does freeze over. In this particular piece, the ice hadn't started to form on the lake. And I was out hiking, and a beautiful eagle presented itself in flight over me. I was quite taken with the visit of the Miigwech. Eagle feathers, like any raptors, are protected under federal law, but the bald eagle holds eagle feathers hold incredible cultural importance to not only the Ojibwe people, but a lot of indigenous communities and tribal nations. It is actually illegal to own a Miigwech feather unless you are in fact indigenous. And so in this piece was celebrating that visitation. You'll see the moon quite often in a lot of my pieces. It's very rare that I paint a piece with a sun, and that is because the moon is the grandmother. And so my grandmother is celebrated and honored in all my pieces. And because it was such an overcast sky, this particular winter day, and I lost the ability to put the stars in the sky, so I included the stars in the McGizzy. And this was my first eagle piece, my first bird piece. And it really kind of helped me think about how do I celebrate all of our relatives, including our bird relatives. Um, Second one is a little bit smaller. It's a goldfinch. In this particular case, I named it Goldfinch Friend. The Ojibwe word for friend is Neech. The goldfinch Ojibwe is really challenging, and I didn't want to embarrass myself or my ancestors by trying to pronounce it incorrectly. The goldfinch is, although it's just brilliant in its yellow plumage and its beauty, it's actually holds a more of importance than other birds because it is our language carrier. And so this is a close-up of a painting, and you'll note that it's a series of dots. It's a style that I'm still developing, but I paint in this way using, in this particular time period, I was cutting brushes down to get really small, detailed dots. And unlike pointillism, I started painting this way to honor my grandfather and other members of my family who know how to do beadwork. I did not learn how to do beadwork until the pandemic when the world slowed down. And I finally had the patience to learn it. And so, as a way to honor my grandfather and to honor those that bead and to also just honor Ojibwe beadwork, my style has started to evolve to really move into painting completely with dots. I've since progressed from moving using paintbrushes to thumbtacks, toothpicks, Q-tips, any sticks, anything that will get me a smaller, more detailed um, application of color so that it can start to get textures and shading into the pieces. And this was my first goldfinch. I've since painted a couple more when they come to visit me. In this particular case, one had come to visit me um, just in my backyard on my feeder and happened to be speaking Ojibwe when it came, and it really resonated with me that did it hear the language, and that's why it came to visit me. Did it come to visit me to encourage me to continue speaking the language and learning our language? Um, and so this piece was the result. So now, like I shared with you earlier, I'm a member of Crane Clan. There are seven clans of the Ojibwe people, seven original clans. There's multiple clans as our people moved around the Great Lakes region. In this particular case, the Ojibwe, which is the sandhill crane on the left, our responsibility is for peacekeeping, spiritual teaching, mediation, um, spiritual leadership. And the Hmong, or in this particular case, the Common Loon, is our political governmental leaders. And so, hence its title, Two Chiefs, is the responsibility of the Crane clan and the Loon clan to work in concert, work in partnership for our communities and for our people. I shared earlier tonight when Jennifer and I were just speaking before this evening that I also have the two chiefs featured on my medallion. This is by an incredible Ojibwe artist, Nathan Gordon from Red Cliff in northern Wisconsin. And as you can see, once again, this is birch bark. Here's the sandhill crane, and here's the loon, the Hmong. And it serves as a reminder of when I wear it, not only being a member of the Ojibwe Crane clan, but also the responsibility that I have when I teach and when I share. And so it was funny when I first did this piece, I shared it with a friend of mine from a neighboring tribal nation here in Minnesota. There are 7 Ojibwe tribal nations, sovereign nations in the state of Minnesota. My nation is Grand Portage. Father's a tribal member, an elder. I'm a direct descendant. And our reservation sits on the Canadian and Minnesota border. And then there are a number of nations as far south as central Minnesota, Fond du Lac being the closest to where I'm at in Duluth. And I was sharing him with this piece, and he didn't miss. He's like, "Oh, you painted the 2 chiefs," and it reminded me, "Oh yeah, I did." Um, and this is a piece where I just wanted to celebrate the relationship between these 2 bird relatives, the importance that they have in their relationship. Um, and this is an earlier piece as I'm still developing my style in using dots and and to really kind of improve my technique with to kind of mirror that beating. There's still a lot of organic shapes within. I often get asked, well, what style do you paint in? Ojibwe style that is often associated with us is called the woodland style, where the different relatives have almost an X-ray quality of shapes within the forms. Norval Morrisseau was a First Nation artist from Thunder Bay who is, a lot of his work celebrated, and other Ojibwe artists have, you know, are inspired by him and work. But I'm not a traditional woodland artist because of the fact that I do not paint completely in that style. There are landscapes, there are waterscapes. There's much more dot work in my work than a traditional woodland artist. So I like to call myself an abstract expressionist woodland artist. I don't know if it's a real thing, but when people ask me how to describe my work, that's the best way because my color palette is so bright, but also so are the skies of Lake Superior. It's one of the most beautiful places to call home and to spend time with, with our relatives and the beauty that we've been gifted by the Creator. So much. Thank you. Moving on is the mallard in flight. Male mallards have an incredible plumage. I was quite um, quite excited to paint a mallard. I've never painted a duck before. I think this is my only duck, waterfowl that I've ever painted. You can start to see some of the gradation in the wings, where I'm starting to use different shades of browns and blues to catch the iridescence and the shimmering of the mallard's feathers. Um, I was inspired by some mallards that I got to spend time with in the Voyager National Park. It's the only national park in Minnesota. It sits along the boundary waters on the northern border of Minnesota and Canada. And it's made up of a series of lakes. In this particular case, a male mallard, was spending the entire time I was up there. He was really trying to pursue and woo a female, and she wanted nothing to do with him. And so every morning when I was having coffee out by the water, he would get up and he would fly to her, and there's this beautiful reflection off of the greens and the blues of his feathers. And every morning she would get up and she would fly away or try to escape. And this went on for a good week or so. And finally, when I left the park, the morning that I left, they were both sitting on a nest together. And I thought that was quite a point of celebration that he had persisted. And just wanted to celebrate the beauty that he, not only demonstrated to her, but also that he shared with me every morning while I was having coffee. Um, it's one of my favorites. Every time I look at it, I think about how I could have done it better. But yeah, I just really enjoyed putting this composition together to capture his wings. And then also the background of the wing that's in shadow as he flies. So there we go. So this one's a little bit different in its design, in its composition, and its colors. Um, this piece is called Raven, Goes About Crying Out. And if you look in the background of the piece, there is a Maingun, a timber wolf, gray wolf howling. Um, a lot of different animals and relatives have relationships that sometimes we ignore. Um, during the winter, it's, even though it's quite cold here in northern Minnesota, it's still a very beautiful time on how the landscape changes from snowshoeing or ice fishing. And I happened to be out snowshoeing up along the North Shore, a little bit north of Tetagoose State Park, which is about an hour north of Duluth. And I was out and I just heard, and if you haven't heard a raven or seen a group of ravens before, they can get really obnoxious and loud. And while I was out snowshoeing, I heard all these ravens in the trees, and they were really, really quite upset, and they were carrying on and carrying on and carrying on. And when I happened to finally get to the bottom of these trees, a deer had died. I don't know if it had been killed or, but there was a deer carcass that the ravens were. Uh, some of them had actually got to the ground and were on it, and some were back up in the trees. It was really quite loud. And I finished snowshoeing for the day and whatnot, and called my father and was speaking to some others in my family about, wow, God, these ravens were really quite upset about this deer. And I can't remember if it was my father or an uncle or another elder in my family, but when I was telling them about it, they're like, well, did you know, Sam, why they behave like that? And I said, well, because they're just want to be obnoxious and uh, disturb the peace of my snowshoeing. And the answer was no, is that ravens can't um, tear hide. They can't get to, and they can't get to the flesh or the meat of an animal that's been killed. And so what they do is they cause such a ruckus in their crying and in their calls, it attracts predators. It either in this case in Minnesota, I've seen ravens call in eagles, McGizzies, bald eagles, because of the talons, or in some cases, it attracts larger predators like the mainga and the wolf. And what will happen is that the wolf or the eagle will be successful in ripping the hide open, and as a result, the raven can eat. And so when I heard that story, and I had never thought about it, I was so taken about that relationship that the raven who can fly higher and can see more uh, knows enough, and uses his knowledge or their knowledge to call in predators and other relatives for help. And so in designing this piece, after I learned that information, I wanted to do a piece to celebrate that relationship. And so in this particular piece, the raven is calling out, the wolf is coming in to help and to assist his friend. Um, if you notice in the background, and some of my paintings, I hide different messages or teachings. You'll see 7 pine trees um, in the background. Those are representative of the 7 grandfather teachings of the Ojibwe people. Um, and it speaks to our relationships that we have with each other. And this is one of the first pieces where I started to think about hiding or embedding other items into the paintings for myself to know, but then also to share with those who see my work or when I write the stories of the piece. So this is one of my favorite pieces, and I enjoy ravens because of the colors of their feathers, that iridescent dark navy and purples that they get. And so this piece really celebrates that sometimes we need to ask for help. It's a good lesson for all of us. Next piece is Sunsetting Blue Jay. Um, in this particular piece, the Denisene, the blue jay, it's the end of the day. They are one of my favorite bird relatives. For me, I have a very special relationship with them. I know that people have strong feelings about some of our bird relatives, including the blue jay. I've often heard stories of blue jays dive bombing people who have gotten too close to their nest, or blue jays are extremely territorial. Um, I've it's very often it's not very often that I'll go more than 2 or 3 weeks without a blue jay visiting with me, or when I'm hiking, or when I've been on a fast or in ceremony in the woods. In this particular case, I really wanted to challenge myself to work with a very small instrument. And so not only did I use paintbrushes on this piece, is I also started to use sewing needles um, to get these very small gradations, similar to the different shades of blue that you'll see along um, going into the tail feather section of the blue jay. And so the number of stars is actually the day of the year in which this blue jay sat with me. And this is my favorite one. Personal note, this will be probably my next tattoo. I haven't found the time yet but uh, they're considered the tattletales of the woods because of their cry. They can be quite vocal in their protection of their territory and of their young. Mm. Um, the red-tailed hawk, um, you don't see them. I do not see them very often. I think I can count on one hand the number of red-tailed hawks that I have seen since I've been home over the last 6 years. Most recently was last year when I was out hiking in Grand Portage. One had come and flown from one side of the trees to the other. Um, and when they launch, they have these incredible tail feathers, which you can see in this particular piece, in this very burnt umber, almost cinnamon rust color. In this particular case, I was traveling to my parents' home, and on my way home, I visited my parents, and I had come home, and I saw that one had been struck and killed. And so people joke with my family that you don't want to be on the highway near me in case I see an animal or relative that's been struck and killed. But I got out of my car and I put down a sema, which is our tobacco. We use it when we hunt or when we gather to live in reciprocity. So if we hunt, we put down tobacco to thank that relative for their life and their gifts to us. The same thing when we harvest and gather different plants. So in this particular case, I had seen that he had been struck, and I traveled with a wool blanket for just these types of circumstances. And I picked him up and I gathered him up and got him off the road and put down tobacco, which is, like I said, and so I brought him home. And I called a friend of mine who is also an Ojibwe, and he's an incredible, um, he's quite talented, very humble, but just an incredible maker for our people, moccasins and our regalia, um, our vest. He's really just a good human. And so I was sharing with him that I had found a red-tailed hawk. Their tail feathers do carry medicine and have ceremonial importance. for Ojibwe, and I asked him if he had any need for them, and he was like, absolutely. And so I processed and cleaned the bird. Um, and I actually, drove to his house with the tail feathers. They're used in different regalia and that we wear during our powwows and during ceremonies. And so I gifted him feathers from this red-tailed hawk to thank him for everything that he does for us and for the community. Um, and also as a way to honor this relative that had been struck and killed. Um, they are quite magnificent relatives in their colors and their plumage. Um, this piece probably has close to 1,000 dots. Half of them just in the head of this. Where this is one of the first pieces that I started painting with thumbtacks that had been hot glued to dowels to get very fine detail. And so um, I was really thankful that I got to experience this relative and that I could honor him with this piece. Excuse me. Um, this piece, Ojibwe carries the medicine. Was the cover of another magazine, but I painted this on my anniversary of moving home. Throughout my entire life, I've always come home to Lake Superior. First as a child in Minnesota, spending time with elders and my grandfather. And then as an adult living on the East Coast, I would come home several times a year to visit Lake Superior and Grand Portage. And so I painted this piece as a way to memorialize my first year home. It's actually featured in my first book, coffee table book, alongside a poem that speaks to the crane returning home. And when I say carries the medicine, carries the spirit, carries teachings, and that is represented by the fire within him, burning within him. Most of my most cherished memories, I guess, or learnings or teachings or receiving of stories have happened around a fire with elders and other family members and other friends. And so this piece really is to celebrate my return home to Lake Superior, the North Shore. And once again, you'll see that there are 7 pines framed in the background, um, representing our grandfather teachings. Yeah, and was very quite detailed in the neck and going into his legs. All right. Oh, the Opeechee, the robin. Um, I painted this piece. I had a Opeechee, a robin that flew into my studio, and he came and landed on top of my easel. And he just sat there, and I have windows on either side, so he flew in one, and I was worried that he was going to try to exit or leave my studio through the other window, and so I quickly opened the window so he could fly out, and he didn't fly out. He stayed there, and he sat there with me. Um, and if you live anywhere where it's as cold with such a long winter season, like Minnesota, snow can be as early as October, and we can have snow all the way until April, early May. We get very excited when the Opeechee comes, when the robin comes. It means that warmer weather is coming, spring is coming. And so I know that I get very excited every spring when he shows up and he comes back. And I think we forget about him. At least I know that I do at times because the spring is here and the summer is here, and other bird relatives like the loon and others that migrate return back to Lake Superior in the North Shore. And I felt bad that I haven't painted more pieces to celebrate him and how important he is and how excited we all are when we see him in spring. And so this is one of the few round paintings that I've done. It's an actual round canvas. The breast of his red plumage and his cinnamon, there's actually 5 different reds in there, and it was painted exclusively with thumbtacks that were glued. So that's very, very small. But this is the Opeechee. Um, And yeah, I thought it was important that we celebrate and honor him, and how excited we are when we see him come home again and return. This is Gichi Gami, and that what that means is cedar pileated woodpecker. Um, Gichi being cedar, meme being the pileated woodpecker. Cedar is one of our four medicines of the Ojibwe people, followed by tobacco, sweetgrass, and sage. I was actually out bird hunting, and um, this beautiful meme. I've seen them when I bird hunt. This most recently, I saw him this summer. He was out and he was really enjoying a cedar tree that had died and he just had this brilliance of red against the cinnamon or the rusty uh, bark of the cedar. And so this is my newest meme. I think I've painted him maybe 3 or 4 times, but there was something really captivating about how he was circling around the cedar as he was as he was boring holes, looking for insects and grubs. And so you can see there's three different techniques in this piece. There's the paintbrush of the sky, a wider brush, a lot more colors blended in into the night. Um, then you get to see a much smaller paintbrush with the cedar and getting the waves and the textures. Cedar is really hard to paint. I think I spent more time painting the cedar than I did on the meme or the sky. And then last but not least was placing him on the trunk with, they have these really golden eyes. If you've ever seen a meme pileated, they're quite large. It's kind of unnerving when you see them on the ground because they are a couple feet tall. They're very large birds. So they really do stand out when they are on the trees feeding. So this was to celebrate him and then also to celebrate the medicine of the cedar tree as well that he was enjoying. It's a medicine that you can see behind me here. I have sweetgrass and cedar in my home. These medicines are very important. Cedar is actually a great source of vitamin C, so we use it in teas as well. All right. Voyager Twilight Loon, the Voyager National Park, again, is it's a very beautiful place here in northern Minnesota. Um, I was asked to think about designing a piece to commemorate the Voyager National Park turning 50. I did two of them. I wasn't sure which one I liked more. This is the one I actually kept. This is the Hmong, the Common Loon. Um, and there is the Voyager Wolf Project. There are a number of wolf packs that travel throughout the Voyager National Park, and they're studied and protected. And so this piece is not only just to honor thinking about what two relatives really speak to me when I think about visiting Voyager National Park. The loon is one, the Maingan, the wolf is another. But thinking about how to capture that relationship, and there's these really great, beautiful jetties of rocks at different parts in different lakes, and wanted to capture the loon swimming along with the moon high above. The Voyager National Park is also a dark sky sanctuary. It's one of the few in the world, and I wanted to celebrate that where there's no ambient light. And it's a great place to see the northern lights, as well as the constellations, and a chance to do and learn Ojibwe constellations and teachings there. But it's incredibly it might be more beautiful at night than it is during the day. And so in this particular scene, it's dusk and the sun is setting, and we're getting ready for the beauty of the night up there in the Voyager National Park. And as Jennifer shared, I was an artist in residence in Teddigooch State Park. It sits on the shore of Lake Superior. This past year, there was an owl eruption, and I want to preface this with owls. There's very strong feelings about owls in Ojibwe culture, both positive and negative, more negative. and recognizing that it really goes with how you were raised. My grandfather had a very strong relationship with owls, and he passed that love and that teaching on to me. And so this past spring, this past year, we had an owl eruption. It happens every maybe 15 to 20 years. But what happens is in Canada, the owls, great grays, snowy owls, they come south looking for food. And this particular last year, when I was up in the residency, a great gray had been struck and killed. And I received a call from the DNR, and I shared with them, the importance of this, the sensitivity in which to talk about this relative. Um, and I happened to be in Tetagooch teaching a class with children. Um, and they had an exhibition that night. And when I went up there when I learned about the great gray being struck and killed, there was actually a halo around the moon. Um, and this is the only piece that I've done to indicate that depicts that halo. This is the most complex great gray, probably any composition I've done. This was painted, it's got almost 5,000 dots on it. You're like, well, how do you know? And I actually count. It's like almost like a meditation. It's like people who crochet, or when you're doing something repetitive with your hands or knitting, is I'll actually count. Um, um, and in this particular one, piece was completed to celebrate not only his importance as a raptor, as a relative, his cultural importance, but also as a way to, when I share about different relatives, um, I've been called at different times. uh, Apologies. Um, I've been called at different times to come collect owls that have been struck and killed, um, because there are such strong feelings about them. Um, Miigwech, and then I believe there we go. You might have heard my timer go off. I want to pace myself so I didn't run out of time. This is the Thunderbird. This is the only bird relative that I have not seen with my own eyes. The Thunderbird, we're raised with stories of the Thunderbird as Thunderbird beings. I've illustrated a children's book for the Red Lake Tribal Nation, which is they do a lot of children's books in English and Ojibwe as a way to preserve. And these beings, when they flap their wings, they used to live really high up in the sky and in the mountains. In this particular piece, it's titled, a Namariki or Thunderbird flies above the sleeping giant. If you look at the horizon of Lake Superior, it looks like a human figure lying down. That's an actual peninsula in Thunder Bay, in Ontario, like north of Grand Portage, about 45 minutes. It's also home to a reserve, another tribal nation. Um, my grandfather took me there as a child. A few years ago, I happened to go up to their powwow grounds and stand and look over Lake Superior, over Gichi Gami, at the sleeping giant, and there was thunder in the sky. You could hear the thunder, you could see the lightning, and it was the Thunderbirds flying. And so it took me 2 years to do this piece. It's one of the few pieces that actually includes metal. And so if you look at this piece, there's actually lightning that's coming off of his wings as he flies above Lake Superior. And that lightning is copper. Um, Also to honor Norval Morrisseau um, for his Ojibwe name. And so I wanted to finish off on with this piece. It's a piece that means quite a bit to me. It's near and dear, but it was my first and it's my only Thunderbird outside of illustrating the children's book. So let's say Miigwech, which is thank you. And then I believe we have time for questions. If we run out of time this evening, I'm inviting any of you you can email me at my email address that's listed. If you have any interest or you want to follow along with my work, I typically post my paintings on Facebook or on Instagram at Crane Superior, my clan, and where I live on the lake. So, Miigwech.
Thank you, Sam, so much for that thoughtful, knowledgeable, and really beautiful, beautiful talk. Uh, I think we're all going to watch the recording later so we can zoom in on all those incredible details, especially that red-tailed hawk. Oh my gosh. Um, Let's see, we have lots of questions. So let's start with there are lots of questions about process. So our attendees would like to know, what the medium, what medium you're working with most of the time, acrylic, oil, kind of the size of these works. Are we, what, give us some idea of that, and whether or not you work from photos. Is this all from memory, or do you bring back, images to the studio?
All right. Well, I paint predominantly in acrylic. Um, I don't have the patience for oil. If I don't like it, I want to be able to paint over it or change it. So I work predominantly in acrylic paint. Um, Wherever you see black, I will work in ink, or I'll mix ink into darker medium to get the very clean edges and tight lines. Um, the standard sizes of my pieces are typically around 12 to 14 inches by, I like working in squares, if you couldn't notice. Um, I don't work very large. That has changed since my residency, where I've started to want work much bigger because I've wanted to incorporate more of the landscape. The last image, the Thunderbird, probably is my largest piece. It was 30 inches by 40 inches. And it was done on panel versus a canvas because of the weight of the paint. I didn't want the canvas to buckle. Um, and so my process typically is I'll be outside. I'll be out exploring the beauty of the North Shore, of the water. I'll be driving, I'll visit somebody, but something will resonate with me, either in a story that was shared with me, and I'll ask that person if I can paint their story. Or it's like with the Raven piece, I'm just outside hiking and I see something and it sparks a question or an interest, and I go back to an elder in my family or another artist or uh, just another person that I'm like, hey, they might know something. With the residency, I spent a lot of time with the park rangers and the naturalist asking questions. And thinking about what they were sharing through an indigenous, through my lens and my cultural lens. Um, and then I'll come home. I mean, there's been times when I've been out hiking and I've seen, like, there was one time I was hiking and a Wawaskesha, this beautiful buck came out, and I hadn't got any birds. I hunt partridge. They're a great food. Um, Grew up with my grandfather cooking, but there's been times when I've been outside with the intention of being outside all day and running into one of our relatives, and then like I have cousins that won't hunt with me because they're like they'll probably leave us. Um, and I'll come home to my studio and I'll sketch it out. There's days when my studio work or my process is to paint 5 or 6 skies that day, just the skies, because I woke up and I saw this brilliant sunrise over the water, and I want to paint it until I get it right. And I'll have skies hanging on my studio wall with no water, no land, no relatives, just because I wanted to get the sky right. And then when I have that experience with a relative, I'm like, that's the sky, like the blue jay, the sunsetting blue jay. I had painted that sky um, probably 4 or 5 months before he came to sit with me. And then when it happened to be getting dark and he came and sat there, and they have such a distinctive cry that it's a blue jay. And then I was like, oh, yeah. And I went right into the studio and started to work. If I'm lucky to get a picture, sometimes I'm lucky to get a picture, especially with bald eagles, because if they are hunting, they will perch high and they'll stand there and they'll perch there and watch you. Some birds, not so much. Goldfinches aren't going to hold a pose, and then I have to quickly sketch them and um, or ask. Sometimes I ask my friends who are photographers. I'm like, does anybody have a really good picture of a fox? Because I saw one, but he ran, and would you mind sharing it? And then I have the deal is if they share a photo with me to use as a photo reference, that I'll gift them a print of that piece as a thanks. You know,
Mhm.
my next investment is I'm going to get a good camera because the iPhone or my, is too janky. Like when I'm trying to get an image.
Mhm,
Which,
mhm. Yeah, and good point on the birds not staying still so that we can
no.
get looks or get good pictures of them.
Mhm.
Um, so we have a question about the seasons. So, your paintings seem to all be placed in winter. Is there a particular reason or symbolism for that?
Well, with the birds, I think, there's a lot of winter. Maybe because it's our longest season. It's 6 months out of the year here. There's a beauty like with any season. I mean, I've lived in Massachusetts. I remember the winter and that transition between summer to winter and how wet and gray um, that autumn fall is. Um, and so there's a different spirit to the land and and I just find my favorite seasons are summer. The extreme of the plant relatives are have awakened. The the bees and the birds and everyone is out. The our animal relatives are out getting ready for the fall, and they're gathering and hunting and whatnot. And so it really is the two extremes of summer and winter that are featured. Um, Autumn, we're getting into in winter baboon, our winter season is our season of storytelling, in our culture. That's when we share our stories, and there's stories that we can't tell unless there's snow on the ground. I know there's been events here in Minnesota with Ojibwe authors or artists, um, and the snow has melted and the event has been canceled. We don't share the story. And so that could be contributing. I love winter. I love the spirit and it's so cold and quiet. And those relatives that are awake should be celebrated. But maybe that's a really good question. And I'm going to think about it now. And I'm going to paint nothing but spring and flowers. Um,
Right. Yeah, amazing. We have a question about the goldfinch. Why is the goldfinch your language carrier?
Um, I am not, I can't say that I know the story by memory. I remember learning from an elder a language, a cultural keeper, a language holder, and sharing my desire to learn, why I desired to relearn and start to relearn the language because I had lost it. Um, I had heard it from my grandfather during my summers with him. I had heard it at different times. And I remember him telling this story, and I don't think it's my place to share that story. I'm sure I'm not an elder, regardless of the gray in my hair. Um, and it's not my story to share because it was his story. So I do know that I've heard from multiple elders that it is the holder of our language, and I'm sure someone really wanted to investigate. As my dad says, go use grandfather Google. You can look up the stories, but it's not mine to share.
Okay, understood. We have a question about the beadwork. That's sort of technique that's inspired by the beadwork. Are there beadwork artists with whom you've collaborated or who have particularly inspired you?
Oh, I mean, I've beaten one thing in my life. I learned by Guy Sarahhouse. Um, she is a CEO of Heartberry. It's an Ojibwe company that does blankets, and um, she has been a great teacher and friend and supporter. I learned beadwork through from her with a number of women. I was the only male. Um, and I'm a two-spirited artist, so it was okay to be the only male with the women giving me uh, some grief. Beadwork, like other things, different tribal nations have their own style and their own like. I know that there are elders in my family that can look at beadwork and be like, "Oh, they're from this tribal nation because of the style of the beadwork. You can recognize it." Um, Michelle Defoe is a Fond du Lac. Um, she lives near me. She's from Red Cliff, but she beaded me cranes to honor me. And to thank me. And so I mean, to sit down and do this level of work, and there's leather hide on the back. She's a beadwork that has inspired me. Um, I've had other indigenous artists use my paintings in their work and asked me, could they use as a template? And I was like, of course, absolutely. I'm honored by that question. Jessica Goki is an Ojibwe beadwork artist. Her work's absolutely incredible. Her work's been in the Vatican. It's in the Detroit Museum Art Institute. She's been an inspiration where I've talked to her. My next focus, my next goals over the next year is to learn more about our plant relatives. It's something that I've grew up learning about our animal, bird, and fish relatives, but it's an area that in my paintings, I really don't incorporate our plant relatives. And I want to do it correctly and appropriately and accurately. Um, and so that's something that I want to, and it's featured in a lot of our beadwork is our florals and our plant relatives.
Hmm. Interesting. And how will you sort of get yourself there? How will you learn about those plant
Mm.
relatives if you're not as knowledgeable?
Well, I mean, there's different, one of the things that when we share knowledge, we have to ask, we have to, make those requests respectfully to elders and to others, gifting tobacco, and you have to have that relationship. Um, and sometimes it's something as organic as or natural as saying, "Hey, Dad, do we have anybody in our family that has plant knowledge, or knowledge of our plant relatives?" I have an elder in my family, Sue, who's very smart and holds that teaching. That's why we have clans, right? Different clans hold different teachings and different knowledge for our people. And it might be something as simple as, asking some of my friends who are also Ojibwe to say, you know what, I want to learn more. I want to do it accurately. I am going to be uh, I'm going to be reaching out to a couple cousins of mine who are smarter and hold that knowledge. My cousin Travis, who authored, and preserved our great grandmother's story. He works at the Mille Lacs Tribal Nation Museum in central Minnesota, and they have a collection. It's run by the Historical Society. I've reached out to Jessica, who's an incredible beater and things like that. So it's really about relationships and it's if they share knowledge, then there's gifts. I share knowledge, and so it's always a reciprocal relationship.
Well, we will look forward to seeing your future work with plant relatives. I want to say thank you so much, Sam. We're really honored and very grateful for you sharing your stories, your knowledge, and your incredible art with us tonight. Thank you all for coming. Sam's beautiful talk has been recorded, so it'll be posted on our YouTube channel so you can watch it again. And like I said, zoom into those details and you can share it with your friends. We hope that you'll join us for our next lecture, which takes place on November 5th and will feature scholar Eulogio Guzman, who will talk about amazing feather mosaics made in the 16th century in Mexico and the important role these objects played in political negotiations at the time. I hope you'll join us for that. Thank you all. If you did not get your question answered, again, please feel free to email Crane Superior Studio at Gmail. Sam will be happy to hear from you. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Sam. Have a wonderful night, and we will see you next time.
Chimigwich, thank you. Giruwabman.
Thank you.